But the last 2 days, just taking in all this fucking information. I thanked Moosh came over and had soup with us for dinner last night, and I thanked her. She was the one who sent me that video from Mark the Arcturian. She was like, hey, here's a blast from the past. She'd listen to this again. I said to her, thank you so much for sending that to me, because it was a really good revisitation.
Oh, yeah.
Go back and see that information again with a new whole perspective now, like the whole, because it gave me pieces, and I was like, oh, well, here's a piece, because all the Electric Universe guys, from what I'm seeing, they're not talking about that one piece, i.e. the proton belt. And all of a sudden, because you start leaning really strongly towards these, towards one specific set of theories. My washing machine is so fucking loud. It must be out of balance again. It's like all I can hear. You start leaning towards one whole large packet of theories. And then sometimes you need that little push reminder to remember what is not in that theory, what they're not taking into consideration. And the whole proton belt, all of a sudden I was like, they're not taking that into consideration. It was like the same with and I've only gone obviously through the very barest bits and pieces. Like I've definitely not gone heavy deep studying on the Thunderbolt stuff or the Dihole stuff, etc. But from what I'm seeing is there's no mention of that aspect. And one of the pieces he shows in that Mark the Arcturian video is when the Earth, the precession, when the Earth enters that belt, that there's the tilt. The tilt changes. And I'm like, but that's what we've been talking, like that's what I've been talking about since
it tilts,
2010, but really strongly since 2012 and 2013. The tilt of the planet has changed. No one's talking about that. Even the Electric Universe guys, they're not taking into this consideration of like, no, we have another physical symptom. There's another physical symptom here that you're not taking note of, and that is that it is obvious that the tilt of the planet has changed. So how does that fit into their narrative, their storyline? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's really interesting, and it was a great big whack for me too, because that was my original. I remember Gail said something yesterday about, we all have our own favourite narratives, I suppose you could say, but certainly it was the photon, the precession of the equinoxes, and this notion that the Earth would move into this a band of highly charged particles, the photon belt. That was the first thing that I took on as, oh, that feels right to me. And that was that Barbara Marcinak or Barbara Hand-Clow or someone way back in the, I don't know, 70s or 80s. Yeah. She wrote that. Or, well, one of them, Barbara Hand-Clow or Barbara Marcinak, I'm not sure which one, way back. And that was the first thing that I read that went, okay, that sounds like sort of right. And I was thinking the other day, looking at those interpretations of the information from the magnetopause and magnetosphere, I was just wondering if there was a different quality to the plasma that was hitting us.
Okay, but here's the point that Nick made. And this is a really, really important point. The instrumentation that we have only measures the known.
Yes, exactly.
So it only measures, it's like, it's like having a thing to measure frequency, but it only measures between 200 and 220 hertz.
Yes.
So therefore there could be all this other shit coming in too. But because it's only, so Nick made this, I don't even know if I can repeat it now. Because Nick, when he gets into the magnetics, because he's got a way more expanded amount of background knowledge in the magnetics aspect, right? And he talked about the measurements. When we measure the fields, he said, we're not measuring, he said, and he watched a video and he's been trying to find it for a week. And one of those, you go through your history, because he says it was about 2 months ago. He can't find it. And he says the guy was really, to quote Nick, a real hillbilly sounding guy. Like really sound like a hillbilly.
That sounds like blue Kool-Aid. Is it not blue Kool-Aid?
I don't know.
Blue Kool-Aid sounds like he lives in Tennessee on the back of a truck.
Yeah, and that's so maybe. So he said the guy was showing magnets, and he was saying, okay, look, here is our problem we have with magnetic theory.
Yeah.
And he was showing how when you hold an instrument to measure the magnetic field, it only measures, and I can't remember what the component is, it only measures this one component of the magnetic field. It's not measuring the actual, I don't know how to phrase this right. That's why I need Nick here. It's not measuring one aspect of the magnetic energy that comes out. So he says, like, so you've got a toroid, right? So let's say you've got a magnet. Here's the North Pole, here's the South Pole, and you have this torus field, right? And he says, when you hold the to measure here at the top and around, and of course, when you get the equator, that's the weakest point of the magnetic field, right? Which plays into another piece that I was looking at yesterday that made me go, shit. And he was talking about we don't have maybe you, but there is no measurement place where you can actually get something to measure this part of the magnetic field. We are lacking in the instrumentation. So one of the things Nick was talking about was the not just the dielectric, but he said, when electricity jumps from one to the other. Oh, it's stupid. The word has gone right out of my head. If you have two electrically charged things, for example, you see it with the Tesla balls, right? And it arcs back and forth. He said there's a certain piece to that is missing. And when we talk about from what he's seen, a lot of these, just the little bits and pieces of electric universe theory and all this stuff. He says, talking about this aspect, they're talking about Earth, Sun. But we have these other aspects, like what are we connecting to? So that's what I was talking again about, whether we have a Nibiru in the system, whether we have another star system, another planet, a sun that is within our system, because we're seeing all these bizarre fucking 2 sun images, and there's been enough published now that we can no longer take that off the table. Like that has to be seriously looked at. And if the electrical is coming back and forth, and what is, if we're going through the proton field, these highly charged particles, we don't know what those particles are because we've never been through this before. So therefore, our instrumentation may not be measuring, not capable. They're not even capable of measuring it because it's just not even on the table.
Yeah.
Then we've got interactions, and we have to look at interactions between different types of electrons, protons. How are they interacting? These are some of the pieces that are radically missing.
Exactly. And that fellow, that thing I sent you in chat the other day, who was it, that I haven't come across before, was talking about the war purports that the electrons in Alcyon's rings release a type of unknown energy. Now,
so I just pulled up, did you see the link I sent you? Just after I sent you the Zoom link, I sent you another link because you gave me the name of the guy.
Oh, good. Okay.
Weir.
Okay, I've got it up now. Yeah. Great. I'll read that.
So I was just scrolling through it while I was waiting for you to come in. German scientist Paul Otto Hess described his beliefs about the belt and its impact in his 1949 book, Der Jüngste Tag, whatever, The Recent Day. The concept was further progressed in 1977 by Samuel Unwar, I don't know how to say his last name. His lecture, The Rings of Alcyon, at the conference Sober Alcyon, something or other. in which he cites Hess, who predicted that if the Earth enters the belt first, a great fire in the skies and pyrotechnic lights would occur. If the sun enters first, and it quotes, the radiation release would interfere with the solar rays and darkness would reign for about 110 hours, after which everything would return to normal. War refers to the photon belt as Alcyon's rings, and he claims Alcyon, War claims, is the principal sun or star of the Pleiades 7-star cluster. And he said, it has been said that the sun which illuminates us is the 7th sun that circles Alcyon. And Alcyon is precisely the principal sun of the Pleiades, and its orbit gravitates 7 suns, our sun being the 7th, which circles Alcyon. Mm. And some of these pieces keep coming back. Like you're getting little mentions to this, right? Mm. Alcyon's rings made of radiation caused by the splitting of the electron, which is released as energy, by which Weir refers to manasik, a Sanskrit term for the mind that is in some way related to the inferior man's, the inferior mind, or to the superior man's, the superior mind of the subtle body. The electrons, War purports, release a type of unknown energy. So these things get passed off. For example, this one thing in particular is being passed off as a new age thing, new age movement. But it's not coming from new age movement. Like, this information has maybe been pieces of it pulled out to support ideas and belief structures, etc. But it's not actually part of it. This is there's pieces here, and I'm like, all these other guys, like I'm like the Diehold stuff, he's not really talking about anything to do with the proton or this high dense particle cloud that we're in. The electric universe guys, as from what I can see, they haven't really gotten discussed that at all. So there's another piece that is missing, and it's like we've got these pieces, and we need to be able to find a way to be able to
pull them together.
How they play together. Discern how do they play together? Because it's very obvious. Like, I'm watching the Diehold stuff, and his stuff is fucking good. Like the link I put in this morning.
Yeah.
It's a four video set. And I've got it cranked up so it's playing back at 1.25 because he spends so much time umming and ahhing that it makes me nuts. So I'm like sped it up his talking. Now that I've learned how to do that trick, it's making things much easier with certain things.
Oh yeah.
And he's typical of scientists like that, where they go off on little tangents because their minds are going, their minds are out there, and they're like pulling all these pieces. And I don't want to hear all the little pieces. I just give me the fucking. Take this 4 hours of discourse, chop it down into 30 minutes, just give me the basics. That's all I need.
Yeah.
But he talks about, the one thing that's really interesting in that first video is he talks about how the fact that it's very obvious the CIA, NASA, the American government, and vicariously through them, obviously all other world governments, know this shit. They know it's coming. They know this stuff is happening. And they've done everything in their power to corrupt the information for example, and the year that the CIA and NASA were both created under the same security directive in 1958. And if I'm not mistaken, 1958 is also the year the book Adam and Eve came out that the CIA took and classified.
Right. Because nobody knows. I mean, the people who talk about photon belts say nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yep.
When we go through it this time.
No one knows.
Yeah. Interesting.
We have a certain amount of understanding. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have a certain amount of pieces that are now starting to fall together, that enough at the very least that we know we can take the vast majority of all the mainstream science and throw it out the fucking window. Like, and we've got enough now. Like I said, even that first Diehold video, which I posted you the link earlier, he clearly shows the collusion. He clearly shows how they're blocking all this information. he received visits from, people who all of a sudden wanted to know, gee, that book you just released in 77, where did you get your information from? This kind of stuff.
And I was starting to look for NASA information on the photon belt. They call it something like very frivolous. They have this, it's like a wispy cloud of stuff or something. They're very dismissive of it. As far as I can see, I've only just started looking, but...
Did you watch that Mark the Arcturian thing? Because I went through and pulled up a bunch of articles. Because he gives you, he was flashing articles up, and I just kept pausing and then looking them up. So, for example, I got into that's another piece we have to look at, right? He played a little clip from Suspicious Observers. I was like, oh, fuck, cool. I'm going to go look. I found the piece. I found the video, which is no longer on Suspicious Observer's website. I had to find someone who had copied it out under their title, right? So I found it and I listened to it. And it was all over the news when I went searching for that piece of information, i.e. about the magnetic poles flipping and how there had been a quick flip.
Yeah.
When I went and looked, I found the original study, which was released in, I think, September or October of 2012, saying that they looked from these sample studies, these core sample studies of the magnetics and that they looked at it, they looked at the rocks, that there was a mini flip 400 years ago. And then you get into the shit that Ben was talking about on the last thing, talking about at the solar minimums or grand solar minimums, you have what is obviously an enlightenment. And like that is 400 and some odd years ago was when the Renaissance took place. So you have this, the Renaissance took place. Oh my God, there's music, art, everything, literature, everything, philosophy. It kind of exploded. But then the other thing Suspicious Observers did, he was talking about the solar minimums. And I love going back to look at shit like that from 2012, because he pulled up the graphs and he's talking about when the minimum happened in 2009, 2010, etc. The last solar minimum ended in midway through 2010. Now we are told by NASA the sun works on an 11-year cycle. High, low, high, maximum, minimum, 11-year cycle. It never changes. It's always this way. Well, if the last solar minimum ended in 2010, and we know that we've been in a solar minimum since mid to late 2016, well, guess what? Your 11-year cycle, throw it out the window. It doesn't exist. It doesn't. It's not fucking right. It doesn't fucking exist. There's another piece there that we have. What changes the equation, or what changed the equation to?
Yeah. And it seems to me that it's the movement. It's the movement in space, in the spiral. You know, the spiral, the diameter of the rings of the spiral reduces and reduces and reduces. So yeah, I wonder. Because it's the movement. That movement seems to be the piece that keeps getting left out, doesn't it? The movement in space.
Yes. The movement of not just our solar, like, first of all, our planet.
Yeah.
And our tilt. Our movement in time, as in, like, for example, time speeding up, slowing down, etc. This is a change in movement. Whether it's us turning, like our gravitational spin changing, versus its movement around through the solar system, and our solar system moving around through galactic space. But there's a piece that was really interesting that came out of the die-hold, and I sent you guys a little time clip when I sent you the link, and I set it to a time. And it's a little early, so you gotta listen to 45 seconds of him kind of rambling about something else. And he talks about the sun. And the one thing he keeps talking about is the sun is a precise chronometer. It does these things on exactly the exact same cycles. And if it was a natural big ball of helium that's just exploding in space, which is what NASA wants us to believe, there would be no rhyme or reason. There would be none of this exact precessionary. And he called it, what's the terminology he used? Give me a second. No, it was not the precession. Is this it? No, this is all the one with all the fucking math. It was like, holy shit. Crap. Theory of multidimensional reality is what he calls it. The theory of multidimensional reality. And of course, when he says that, I immediately went, okay, wait. What are you saying? And he's talking about the sun is sending out light, but that light isn't light. The light is information. And that information is an exchanging of information going back and forth. And for some reason, it just triggered me to go, okay, if the sun, and he made a comment somewhere, I think in the first video, because he gets into, the Diehold guy Voight gets into biblical stuff and talk about religious narratives, etc. But he made a comment of the thing about God, and he said, the sun is a chronometer. The sun is obviously a clock, a cyclical. It measures the cycles precisely. And what our concept of God is whoever created that clock. And I'm kind of like really chopping up his said. That's not precisely what he said, but that was what I inferred from it. And I sat there, was like, okay, but wait a second. If we're talking about multidimensional reality, which we have to look at the greater meaning of multidimensional reality. And this whole concept of the sun being for our solar system anyways, is the source of that cycle. And I just sat there and was like, okay, but almost like the concept of the sun as being a portal. And that these energy waves that it spits out could be literally different dimensions, like literally multiple dimensions. There's something to this, and I can't. That's what I was just before I was talking. That's what I've started like just going. Okay, I need to find. Can I find any information on the sun as a quantum clock? That's the term that keeps going into my head. The sun is a quantum clock. Each being quantumly entangled, each dimension that it creates being quantumly entangled to the next. And going back to, again, what we were talking about, the whole thing of like these multiple, my internet connection is unstable. Hysterical. That each of these realities, dimensions, timelines, whatever the fuck you want to call them, being inextricably linked, entangled with the other. So therefore, everything that exists on each timeline would be entangled with each of the particles, persons, etc., that exist in another timeline dimension. And that, I don't know, what were we talking about yesterday or the day before in the Unfuckers about, it was yesterday, again about that whole theory of like when you die, and we were going back to Ron Newman's comment that really, really triggered me to go back and look at that did we all die in 2012? And we jumped, our consciousness jumps into the next timeline dimension, whatever you want to call it, and that we've been in, my summation, that we've been in some kind of a holding space for all these years, perceived section of time since that event. And is that where the Mandela effect stuff comes from? And that somehow feels to me like this concept of the quantum clock within the sun somehow feels like this is, and I can't explain it. I just don't have words. I can't verbalize.
I keep getting the inception image of this, these collapses and collapses and collapses. If this information is coming out to us, if we're the seventh sun,
isn't that interesting? I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
there's the seventh sun, and then of course the seventh sun, and the kind of like.
Oh yeah.
I may have to look at that too. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but that you know, it's very it's so hard to articulate these
I
feelings.
know.
Yeah, you know, that this information is jumping out from through each sun, which is potentially each, you know, is a different reality, and we are collapsing each one as in readiness to move to a new story, a new dimension, a new space. It's like if you look at the notion that, God, there's so many notions, that this journey through into the photon belt signals a completely new phase, a new episode in our evolutionary development. So all these stories related to this past phase of our evolutionary development have to shut off, have to close down.
Have to collapse.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting. We were talking about our emotional attachment to our past a couple of shows ago. I don't think it was last week, maybe the week before. And the fact that you can remember an event that happened in your past, and you can remember the charge is gone. You remember the event. You remember that the event made you happy, sad, angry, whatever, but you no longer feel an emotional attachment to it. You remember it as in, like, it's kind of like seeing a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's there, you know that the character on the screen is happy,
but you don't feel it.
But you don't feel it. There's no emotional attachment. There's that the emotional attachment to that event is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you've closed down that. That's the way I see it anyway. Once you've closed down those attachments, and pretty soon the memory will be gone too, Danny, at the rate we're fucking going.
You don't even, I keep having bizarre memories coming up too. Do you know, like memories of random fucking memories? And this has been for a couple of years now, where you're lying in bed and all of a sudden you have a memory and you can't follow the train of thought that led you to that memory. It's almost like you just popped into this memory of something that happened. And it can be something stupid you did, or something you're happy about, sad, whatever. And you sit there and go, like, why am I thinking about that? Like, how did that, why that memory? Why now? What the hell? And you go into the whole, like trying to analyze the deeper meaning. Oh, well, what was the deeper meaning of that memory? And I'm like, no, dove into a swimming pool and kind of did my dive badly and ended up coming up sputtering to the surface and laughing my ass off because my whole limbs went all over the place. When, you know, there's nothing deeper in the meaning of that fucking memory. It's just a fucking memory.
Yeah. I think we're just cleaning up the disk at the moment, you know, like, you know, the way you do your disk utility thing, and
doing a scan disk and trying to scan and defrag all those particles.
Yeah, exactly. We're defragging the disk. You know, that's what it feels like to me. So that there's all of these endings and conclusions, and, you know, things that used to bother you, you realize don't bother you anymore. The triggers are gone. And I do feel that fairly shortly the actual stories will be gone too, the memories. As we move into this next new stage of whatever, we'll be released from all the crap. I think that's the potential, that this energy, that whatever, you know, all the stories that go with corrupted virus and all that stuff belong in that old stage of development, and that in this new evolutionary phase, those energies have no power whatsoever. And it's a completely new day, if you like.
Well, it's funny, you just said something that kind of triggered me to think about something that kind of came to me over the last year or so. The emotional tie to certain memories, and I'm going to say the emotional tie to certain memories, especially dealing with people, i.e. someone hurt you, hurt your feelings, someone made you angry, someone made you something especially powerful. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't have those anymore. Like, as in, you know, like you can sit there and talk about like my ex-husband, and of course you can imagine the anger, the hurt, everything, the sadness, and it doesn't exist anymore in me. It literally doesn't exist anymore. And I've noted in the last couple of years, things like, in that, for example, that prime example of my ex-husband, because of course all his family is here in Gozo, right? And wanting to kind of like reach out to people because they're like friends. There were people that I knew in my past. You want to like say hi, and that when I specifically reach out and try to reinitialize something, anything, just even just to say hi, that they act from the real negative, like, grrr, and I'm like, but I don't have that anymore. I don't, like, I've put that away, like that's gone. I don't have this really sad feeling anymore. And so, like, I talk to my son Gabriel about various people in the family. Oh, how's this person? How's that person? And when he says, oh yeah, they're doing this, doing that, I'm like, oh, good. Like, I'm genuinely happy to hear that they're going through different things in their life and that they're making good changes, that they're for one specific example, waking up, like really waking up to the shit. And I'm like, it genuinely makes me happy because there's no hurt, anger. That shit is gone now. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does, and I think it's very good, and that's my feeling about the conclusion of this part of the game, if you like. That none of that stuff has any charge. It doesn't hold a charge.
Unless we keep feeding it. Unless we keep feeding it.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that's like, if you keep feeding that charge, like keep feeding that, I hate that person, I hate that, they hurt my feelings. Yeah. Then that remains. Then the tag, like the tether between the two kind of remains.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was thinking that on a micro and a macro level, the electromagnetic charge that we have is so imbalanced in most of us, or has been so imbalanced, and, the notion that the female energy is magnetic and the male energy is electric. So bringing that into balance in ourselves is also going to, is also going to put the charge into neutral, if you like. And in terms of the electric universe,
the same thing about going back to balance. It has to be balanced.
It has to go back to balance. And I was thinking,
masculine to feminine, and we can't keep doing this.
The swing. No, that's over.
Back into fucking balance again.
Exactly. And when we move out of this level, this evolutionary particular horrible shite that we've been through, I think we'll move out of gender specific stuff altogether. But I was also thinking about, in terms of the electric universe, right? If we, the micro and the macro, if we neutralize the charge within ourselves, wouldn't that also extend outwards into greater space? Like, if we can balance the charge within ourselves, wouldn't that extend?
That's very interesting. That's very, very interesting, Ann. And it's not a matter of even concentrating on it. It's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah.
Like, just.
Because I think, for whatever reason, I mean, some of it you do have to, like, I still have loads of things that trigger me. But now I like go, okay, that's a trigger. And it needs to be released. I just need to deactivate that trigger, quite simply. And then, but you just realize, you wake up, some triggers seem to just deactivate themselves. You actually don't need to do anything about it. It just happens. And I do feel...
Yeah, because look at my own personal, what I was just talking about with my ex and his family and that. There was no one moment that I can say to you, I had this deep meditation and all of a sudden it all just is. There's no one moment that I can say I did this and to fix that, or I did cut off these. No, it just happened. It just literally, it's like it just happened itself over time, over a period of time where you realize you're just not angry anymore. Just as if you start having a conversation, a person comes into the conversation, you can talk about it and realize there's no trigger. There's no emotional trigger. And it wasn't any one thing that I did, like oming at my belly button for hours.
It just happens.
Just happens.
Mm. Yeah. Yep. And that's, I mean, the why of it just happening is an interesting thing. Well, you know, as well, it's like, I wonder if it's again, it's like this interactive thing with the energies that we are currently, that we're in are less, they're not exciting, discharging us in some way that, you know, it's possible. I don't know. I can't explain why, you know, these things are.
The one thought that I had when Ben was talking about this, the grand solar minimum, and I don't honestly completely fully think that the whole theory of grand solar minimum is correct either. I think this is another one where we can take pieces from it, but it's not correct as a whole.
Yeah.
When you talked about the whole thing about the last grand solar minimum being 400 years, and that was the Renaissance, etc., then I immediately went, okay, but is that then an indicator of when the magnetic and electrical fields are like this, they inhibit our own, I don't want to just say intellect, because it's not just intellect, but you know what I mean, like inhibit our own personal process of growth, development, of creativity, etc., so that when the fields become lower, it's like our fields they're not being overwhelmed maybe, and that gives us the chance to us to establish our own fields that are ours, not as a response to being overpowered by this planetary field.
Yeah, I mean, some would say, I suppose, a return to raw consciousness, or you know, our original essence. So perhaps that's very strong charge is part of what keeps us uncomfortable in a way. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah. Ron's post that he put up was really, really interesting, because I saw some ties in there, and I could kind of, it made some things kind of clarify in my own mind, because I've thought much like what he said is something I've been thinking about for years too, since 2000. I think the first time we hypothesized that was in 2015, that maybe we did all die in 2012, and that we're now in another realm, which is hence why the Mandela effect, why this type of thing. But it was the conversation, the discussion afterward that was really good. Like everyone in the Unfuckers group were giving their perspectives, and certain people talking about, for example, I can't remember who it was who said that they noticed the Mandela effect back in the 80s. And they didn't have a word for it. They just thought they were fucking losing their mind at the time. And then I thought about all the instances where we've talked over the years, so many instances of people who pretty sure they've died.
Yeah.
Whether they've died in a car crash, they've died from an accident, or they've died from a disease or something. And then they find themselves, you know, carrying on driving down the road, or etc. And they've even into themselves have been like, I think I died that day. And that then I just kind of jumped into this timeline dimension. So my thought was, because after looking at some of the comments, you can go back in your own life and go, oh, there were events in my life that I've had where I noticed really weird changes in people and places and things in stuff over the course of my life, and just a couple that stick out in my head. And it's that whole theory that the guy talks about in the book, which I've now got the book downloaded in the Unfuckers library, that one about the quantum, the title's gone out of my head now. But all the articles I read on it, what his theory was, the fact of like, there is no death, obviously. So when you die, your consciousness goes to the next available container of you, so to speak. And there's going to be changes. There are going to be changes. Like your consciousness, as it comes in, is going to notice that there's fucking changes. So if we've had these few little ones, the little blips here and there throughout our life, But then all of a sudden you have the Mandela effect, which is like a massive, not just little individual ones for people, but a massive amount of people all experiencing these things all at the same time. It's one of the pieces there that makes me go, maybe we did. Maybe something happened. Maybe an event happened and we did all die. And that's why you have this, it's not just one person like this, it's all of a sudden a mass movement into another dimension. And then everyone goes, what the fuck is this shit? No, right? There's something to that too. There's something, and that's why I keep going back to this whole multi-dimensional aspect.
Yeah.
It's one piece that all these guys are not talking about when you talk about Electric Universe and Diehold and all these guys.
And that's what I think. We don't have the software to run that model. That's what I feel, to cohere.
Like in ourselves?
Yeah, in ourselves, that we can't actually run that model. We know there's a way of putting this information together, but we're just not there in terms of, because I'm thinking about the containers, the body containers, the simulation. What is that program on Netflix where, you just decide you want a new container and off you go?
Altered states? Altered carbon.
Yeah.
Altered carbon.
Altered carbon, yeah. Because for me personally, I have to say I have very few experiences of Mandela effect. In Ireland generally, there's very few. I don't think I can, I can see a specific Irish one, if you like. And that makes me think, ooh, yeah, maybe. I mean, this was not just a global thing. That there were, like you were saying yesterday, I think you were saying, talking about pockets of consciousness moving at different rates. And that really pinged me because I thought, yeah, Ireland, for whatever reason, has not had, we've not gone through some of this stuff. Or it's like the organic, you could say organic, the base level of organic consciousness here is pretty close to the surface. And there are some places where I feel there's layers and layers and layers of, in some parts of America for sure, are so fake at this point. You can, stick a pin through, stick a finger through an apparent reality and it just goes moo. And there are, so yeah, so at this point, your head just starts going whirdy-whir.
Well, here's something that's interesting because the one video, the Diehold video I watched this morning, he was talking about the effect of the sun going nova. So the sun goes nova. It has every 11,200 and some odd years. The sun goes nova. When it does, it bursts its outer shell, and that shell goes whoosh. Yeah. That's what forms the Kuiper belt outside of our solar system. The Kuiper belt is basically the end of the ripples of where that shell explodes to. And he talked about the fact and about the physical, what would happen. He says, obviously, whatever landmass is facing the sun, when that happens,
ba-boom,
it's just gone. It's just gone. And he says, for example, and I think he mentioned the fact that they believe the last one was China, India kind of area in there. And again, they've got certain things that they can measure, that they can go, okay, look, well, we've got this, and this that we see in these areas that could very well be. So just to throw a really fucked up theory on the table, most of the Mandela effects are very North American. So, and that is where all those people in 2012 said the disaster was going to be. There was going to be that major fucking disaster in early 2013.
Ooh, Danny.
Going to infect North America. So, is that it? Is it just the fact that this massive drop of consciousness was basically, if something happened, it was instantaneous?
Yeah.
Massive whatever the blast, physical blast, radiation blast, massive, huge disaster, and all those people say died instantaneously, and they just go, bloop, and they jump into the next timeline, whatever you want to call it. That's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting.
Thought of that
It's
before.
totally possible. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, totally possible.
I mean, and there is still that piece that still sits around in my brain of the fact of they, the quintessential they, knew this was coming, and that we were pulled out of that linear time, and we've been in that for the last since 2012. We've been in this, like here's linear time by perception. Here's linear time, and they pull us out into this big bubble that's outside of time. And it exists outside of time, as in.
Yeah. Because that is another notion, is that, they don't want all the slaves dead, more than likely.
No.
Just divert them a little while.
While they try and arrange things the way they want it to be, while they try and do something. I don't know. And again, it's really, really funny because I had something pop up for me. Oh, that was it. After I did the report on the what the fuck just hit us a couple days ago. Was that the third, I think, 4th, 3rd of January? I got a message from someone I've known for a long time saying, "Oh my God, I know you don't really do channeled messages, but you need to read this because," and it's a whole, I don't know, Palladian channel message. It was all very long. It was a thing of the blue glow from the Transformers blowing was us, and we did this, and we did this, and this is this. And the article was written on December 30th, and it said you will witness a massive wave of energy from the 1st to the 3rd. And she was like, "Is that what you just saw? Is that what you just saw? Like, did you just give actually the proof that this channeled message actually gave correct information?" And I sat there and I went back to, I haven't sent a message to my girlfriend Nicole. I'll have to do that. But I followed back in 2011, 2012. I followed a channeler called Greg Giles really, really closely, and he had a lot
Greg Brighton.
No, Greg Giles.
Giles.
He was a channeler, and he turned the whole love and light community, New Age community, on their ear, because in 2012 he started talking about things like disasters. Talk about massive disasters were going to happen. There was going to be a massive disaster on Earth, and that the Galactic Federation was there, and that they were going to take people off the planet in order to save them, to save humanity. They were going to take them off the planet, etc. And when he started channeling this shit, people lost it. Like I can remember, like all the Love and Light crew and a couple of the forums I was in were like, "This is negative. This is horrible. It would never happen," because that whole thing, you can't, think about negative stuff. God forbid you ever discussed anything that was negative.
It's predictive programming.
Exactly. Oh, no. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. And then you get into one of those Mandela effects, because I just went and looked it up on Friday, and he had his breakdown moment, apparently was in September of 2012. That's what the information says now. And I'm like, in my reality, it was in 2013. It was early Tuesday. I want to say like March, April 2013. I'm going to have to contact my girlfriend, Nicole, because the two of us both followed his stuff. And we had big discussions, her and I, on the subject of like, oh, what's happened here? Because basically what then happened is, after all this kind of shit went over, all of a sudden he started getting messages, and he started just relaying them as he always did. And they were negative, but they were like wildly energetically wrong. And I can remember Nicole and I going, "Did Greg Giles' latest one? There's something wrong there. Like, that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like him. It just doesn't feel right." And I guess it was about 3 or 4, and they got worse and worse over a course of a week, and then he went silent for about 2 weeks. And that was just, he was every day he'd put out something. And people were like, has he been kidnapped? Has he been killed? Blah, blah, blah. And then he put out a thing and he said, basically, I've been fucked with. The voices type thing who I've always channeled before have just told me, nah, we're the American military. We took over your brain by radio waves and we've been feeding you this false information all along. So as to run a test.
Wow.
And he stopped channeling. Like that was it. He just shut it down. It was like he literally stopped channeling at that point. Never again would he channel again. And Nicole and I at the time were like, oh, they just basically shut him down. They just shut him down. And they did it in such a way that he himself is now basically going to take, and everyone who has listened to any of his shit is going to take everything he's ever channeled and throw it in the garbage. Because, it was all a test, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a very different energy. Like, I literally remember reading the first one that came out and being like, that's not right. There's something really, really off about this. So I don't know. And that was my whole thing, is because at the time, I can remember when he was reading about this natural disaster that was going to be coming and all the rest of it, I was like, yeah, I'm so fucking glad to finally hear someone talking about the elephant in the room. We know this disaster is coming. Some that had been my gut for years. And I was like, wow, I'm so glad to finally hear someone talking about this, that we can see what's coming. We know what's coming. And wow, okay, so preparations are being made. So now when I'm looking back at some of these other pieces of information, I'm kind of going, again, did they know this was coming? And we say they, like everyone says, oh, it was CERN that jumped us. It was a fucking nefarious organization that's earthbound that jumped us. Or now I'm sitting here going, okay, let's throw this back on the table. Is there some fucking group out there in outer space, interdimensionally, whatever you want to fucking call it, who literally was like, okay, we have a fucking problem here. We need to do something. So we'll just over here while we deal with the fucking whatever it is, and even if it is that macro micro, kind of like you and I've hypothesized, like we were nowhere near ready in 2012 to comprehend this shit as we are now.
No.
So kind of take you out of the timeline to give you another few years to grow and become more aware and get more ready for whatever was coming, and then drop us back in again. I don't know, but it's the kind of crazy shit that's been going on in my head for the last week of like all these different pieces going.
Exactly.
We can't throw any of these pieces away. We just cannot throw any of these pieces away. We have to keep them all on the table.
Yeah, we do. It's like I say, if this was a homeopathic case, I wouldn't be able to prescribe at this point. I know I haven't got all the information.
Too much information.
Yeah, too much. Well, yeah.
How does the sore toe relate to the nosebleed? I just don't understand.
It's just not. There's a point when you're taking a homeopathic case and you just get this, somebody, they call it the slap with the wet fish on the face. You just know you've got all the information. You just know it. There's a knowing. And as we say right now, we don't know what we don't know. And there's absolutely not. I mean, for me, there's a knowing that I just don't know. There's information that is missing, and until I get that information.
Okay, can I ask you a question then?
Yeah.
I never thought of this before. So when you're talking to someone and you're taking down all the information, what if some of what they're feeling is not in this physicality and is a remnant from a prior whatever?
Oh, yeah.
For example, let's say you're talking to me and I've got a problem and you're trying to go through all the pieces. But what if one of the pieces is something that is not dimensionally of here? So I don't know I can't give you that symptom because, does that make sense? Am I making sense?
It does make sense, and that's why we don't. That's why
how
we
do you get that kind of stuff sometimes where you could go like this piece is missing, but then maybe those pieces that are missing are just not here?
Oh yeah. Some of the remedies are very off planet, like hydrogen, for instance, ozone, helium. These are very off planet kind of remedies, and you get in the language. I mean, when you're doing a constitutional case, when I'm doing a constitutional case, I write down the descriptive language that people use, and that's more important to me than the story, because the descriptive language leads me to the homeopathic remedy. And I can only work with remedies that have been proven. So there may well be, and there are situations where, you get somebody's story and it doesn't match any of the known remedies. And then there's nothing, you do that tip of the iceberg. You treat a bit of this and you treat a bit of that, but you know that you just know that you haven't got the whole piece,
the whole picture.
You haven't got it. So yeah, there are certainly, and there are times when past lives bleed through as well.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, even if we look at it,
well, I say past lives. I don't know when the fuck they happen.
Yeah. But using that is it just a terminology, as in something that's not from this physical,
right, this now,
this physical lifetime. Whether it's another timeline, dimension, past life, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So really, I mean, for me, it doesn't matter when things happen, particularly because I'm just looking. All I'm doing, I'm just a technician, really. I take the descriptive language and I match it to a remedy that's been proved, and that's what I'm doing. So I just listen for information all the time. That's my job, is to listen and listen and listen and listen, and then put that information together with a remedy. And that, sometimes it's a really interesting thing, like this kid.
There's language.
The language is the key in our, not just the language, sometimes the drawing.
Body language too.
Did I ever tell you about the kid who he had bedwetting, serious. He was 9 years old. His mother's a homeopath. So, he's had every remedy there is to do with bedwetting. And when he came in to see me, he was totally turned off and said, oh, another bloody homeopath. So I said, right, I think you know what you need. Draw me a picture. And he drew a plane in the sky, a bomb coming out of it, and a dinosaur on the ground. And I went, interesting. And that to a homeopath is plutonium. The half-life of plutonium goes back to the time of the dinosaurs. Or dinosaurs came up in the proving of plutonium. People were dreaming about dinosaurs, seeing dinosaurs.
Wow.
So I thought, interesting. And I showed the kid a big box of remedies, and I said, see if it's in there. And he went like that with his hands. He said, no, it's not in there. I showed him another big box, and he went like that and went, and he picked up a bottle, plutonium 200. He knew exactly. So, the expression comes through in all sorts of ways, but we have to allow it. That's the big thing, to allow that expression. And then you're able to see it. And I think that's our sort of part of our problem with the wrangling with our apparent reality is the allowance of information, because, like you say, we keep getting channeled, and in a way we have to keep coming back to base. And I think in a way, in lots of ways, that's what you do with Unfuckers. It's like you're this base here, this base camp for information. And people, and it's like you're holding more and more and more information.
I need a bigger table. My table's just not big enough anymore. Exactly. I've now got the pieces are piled up higher than I am on the table.
But that's, it's in the allowance of this information that you will eventually get the full picture, because, if you cut off, if you go down a particular track to a cul-de-sac and stay there, you're just not going to be able to turn your vehicle around.
This is it, because of years and years and years of researching different theories, there are pieces, but never once have I come across a single one that you for example, I'll use 3 weeks ago as an example of that. I was looking at a particular thing about magnetism. I was looking at the sun. I was looking at all the stuff. I listened to a specific recording. Of course, I can't remember what it was now. It was talking about the electric universe stuff. And I had this moment of like, oh, wow, this is fucking it. This is it. This is it. And then I started researching more and more, and it was like, oh, it gets so sideswamped with like, I'm sorry, details I don't care about. I don't care where Venus came from. I really don't. It doesn't affect me. It's secondary to the story of like the data I'm trying to. So I get all these other stuff, and when I was going through, it's like everyone wanted to talk on the electric universe stuff about the past. Well, this is how this happened, and this is why that happened, and this is how it took place, and this is the theories of why it worked this way. And I got really kind of like, wait, that's. But there's a question. Like, is that encompassing all the information? And then I re-listened to the interview I did with Sarah Westall. And in one part of that, I talked about the fact of how scientists right now are so put into tiny boxes, and they write a paper on this theory, but it's based on this much information tightly, and it's really, really good for what they're talking about. But it doesn't take in all the other fucking pieces. And that's when I stood back and I went, okay, well, all these guys talking about electric universe theory, solar minimum, those videos. So I was looking into all that stuff, the solar minimum stuff. Whether you're talking about all these different people, they have pieces, but it's not correct because they're not bringing all the pieces together. There are other pieces out there that they're not including in their conclusions, that they're not including in the information. And that's what the last 2 days I've been just ridiculous amount of time I've spent watching videos and researching, pulling up stuff and going into old stuff. Like that Mark the Arcturian video was just a great kind of like just to get me going again, to go, oh, let's look at this old stuff from 2012 and go, oh, there's a piece that I'd forgotten. That is an important piece. I know that's an important piece because it just rings for me that this is a piece that no one is taking into consideration. And this piece, and this piece. So all we can do is just keep collecting the fucking pieces of data and throwing it on the table and just going.
Yeah. And for me, the practicalities as well are very important. It's like, okay, so how useful is this now?
Yes.
What can we do with it? What can we do with this piece of information? How can it help us? How can it help? Because my end of it would be dealing with people who are struggling, who are having a really hard time in this energy. And, people sometimes expect me to have some answers for that. And, there are places where our traditional skills help, and there are other places where they don't. And in a way, part of the job is normalizing the fact that, people, that dizziness thing, for instance, it's not always possible to sort it. And people are going to doctors and going, so, yeah, I'm always on the lookout for, well, how can this help us? How can this piece of information help make sense of what's going on with people?
And I want to direct people, all these theorists, no matter how brilliant they are, no matter how amazing the information is they bring forward, it feels like the vast majority of them are continuously looking in the past. All they talk about is the past. They don't talk about the now. And that was the thing with I watched like a pile of the Die Hold videos this morning. And he's talking about this future event that he's saying is specifically going to happen between September and December of 2048. That's when this event's going to take place. I'm like, yeah, fuck your event. Sorry. I just chuck that out the window. That so just does not resonate in the fact of like a set time, given all the shit that we've already seen.
Yeah.
And he's talking about what happened before, what we've seen before. This is our thing. And I get the importance of it. I get the importance of how we can get a better picture of what's in the future by looking at previous cycles. It's just logical, right? But at the same time, we're in a now. And none of them are talking about the now. They're talking about all this past stuff. They're even talking about future stuff or how something might play out. But no one is, that I've found yet, is saying, okay, here's what we're seeing. We're seeing the geomagnetics of the planet doing fucking insane shit for the last 3 weeks. 3 weeks of solid, like, hit after hit after hit. And if we look at this theory, and this theory, and we put it all together, it gives us a clearer picture of what's happening now.
Yeah.
No one's talking about that. And that's like, and I would love to be able to get all of these guys at a table. If I thought it was even remotely possible, 4 or 5 of these guys to sit down, throw out all their preconceived notions, throw out all the personal time that they have put into their theories, so the hold that it has on them. But if I could get them to all sit down at the table and actually have a conversation where they're not tied to their theories, where they're actually open enough to be able to question and work together. Because I think if you could get all these guys together, like the guy from Thunderbolt and this Volt, and if we could get like the Albers, the astrophysicist who's talking about the solar minimum, and if we could get the other guy that was just did some really brilliant stuff a couple months ago, talking about again about Nibiru. If we could bring all these people to the table in some kind of hypnotic state, drop their fucking egos. I'm sorry, but drop their own. And I don't mean ego in a negative way. I mean they're tied to their research because they've invested years and years and years of their lives to their research. But if they could drop that and actually listen to each other, maybe we could start seeing what's actually going on right now, not 26,000 years ago or 500 million years ago. I just don't fucking care about that shit.
I wonder if that's a possibility. You know, I'm so surprised that the stuff that came up on or showed up on that interpretation of the magnetic poles and so on, that hasn't been discussed anywhere that I can see in the last couple of days. You're the only one who put it up. So even the guys who normally look at that stuff aren't looking at it.
No. And how, I mean,
why?
Maybe I'm misreading the information. There's a very, very good chance because we all know I'm not a fucking astrophysicist. Not even close. But again, I went and looked at the feeds this morning, and all last night, all yesterday, all last night, all this morning, hit after hit after hit. Now, some of them there was 1 or 2 that were, both of them, right around midnight. So there was the big one that started midnight on the 2nd into the 3rd. There was one the 3rd into the 4th. There was one sorry, not 2nd into the 3rd, 4th into the 5th, and 5th into the 6th. Right around midnight. There was, all 3 of those days, massive blast, like the one that I showed in the video. Why at those times? Why at those times? Why at those times specifically, like in that 12 to 1 o'clock in the morning, all 3 days was the exact same huge, and it presented itself in the same way in the graphs. Find me someone who can read those. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody who could read those and who could tell, like Nick said, you know, is it that these graphs, this interpretation of this information is just completely completely off because the machines don't know what they're dealing with.
And that we just don't have the shit out there to measure what's coming in. So maybe all we're seeing is the residual effect. It's like the wave thing. Nick said it. He says, like, you see the wave come in and hit. That's not so important to me as that you see the effect of the hit as it leaves a wake, like a boat going through the water, like a wake. Oh. But if all we're seeing is that is like a representation of the reaction, but not the cause. All that is giving us the reaction that we can measure. It's like, something happens and we can measure an earthquake by the Richter scale, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Richter scale went off. Like, for example, the helioplots went off last night. And you sit there and go, okay, fucking helioplots are all over the place again. It's not an earthquake, but the helioplots are picking it up as a Richter scale type reading. Yeah. But that's not what caused it. That is just the reaction that is a physical reaction that we're seeing because of something that happened. We seemingly don't have the equipment to be able to measure or detect even accurately what is causing the reactions.
It's so annoying. So annoying. I'm looking at the helioplots now. They are still wacky, pretty much all over.
Oh, do I have the...
I think Kiribati has a broken one, actually. Or else Kiribati's always like wiggly.
It's all over the place. Yeah, exactly.
Wherever you are, Kiribati, somewhere in the Xmas Islands, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, they haven't cleaned the whatchamacallit.
Well, we don't know because you have magnetic anomalies, right? Yeah. Like with the geomagnetics are all over the place. There could be an electric anomaly that's just happening there. Boom, boom. And that's why it's like doing this across the graphs. It could be measuring some other anomaly. So therefore it's canceling out the proper readings because there's something happening there. Look, I'll show you this.
Constant S-wave activity.
Look, I'll show you this.
Holy smoke.
So if you look here, so this is, I can't go back any farther than this, so it'll only show you the tonight into tomorrow, but this is at 4:39 yesterday in the afternoon. And you watch this, and it's kind of calm for a little bit, and then as you get into the evening time again, it starts blowing up, and it starts blowing out, and you can see the shit starts happening again. It was between 7 and 8 o'clock at night again, which was the same on the 2nd into the 3rd. And you can see it's continuous. Like we're now at 8:30, 8:50. Yeah. Now we're at 2100, right? So it goes in and it dies down, and then as we get back up again, boom, there's the first one at 2200. And that was the
more distinct waves this time, Danny, aren't they? Before it was just like this pressure, the pressure was in the orange for ages, and now that the orange is coming in waves.
There's the big one, and it happened. Started just before 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you have a secondary one that comes through, and it comes through. So, but same thing between that 12 and 1 time frame at night. UTC is when you're seeing these massive, what just is insane that blows over. Now, is that, like I'm saying, there's a rotational thing to do with, literally physical time of our planet at that time. So this is 6 o'clock in the morning, and it started again, and I think it was around 9 o'clock in the morning. There was another big one.
See that NASA official, Dr. Masha Kozna, Oxford, whatever the heck, wouldn't it be crack to write to her and say, excuse me, could you please have a look at this?
Could you explain to me exactly?
I'm going to do it, Danny. I'm going to do it. I want to see what she has to say. I mean, she is in charge, apparently, of this interpretation of the data. So let's see what she has to say. Excuse me, I've been watching this for a while now.
Send her my video. Send her the video I did the other day and be like, okay. So we can see there's no geomagnetic storm. There's no solar wind speeds. We don't have enough tick in the protons coming in. So what's causing this then?
Yeah. Okay. I'll do it. My project for the day. Well, yeah. Yeah. If it's her. If she's in charge of this interpretation, be interesting to see what she has to say. Okay.